Since not everybody who'd be watching this video saw my update for 5,000 subscribers, I'm going to mention it again. I made an official Discord server for this channel, so check the new link in the description alongside all the old ones, and come hang out with me in the server. Hope to see you there. It's been over a month since I last made a big Xenoblade analysis video, so let's jump right back into the swing of things with one of the weirdest questions I've ever asked on this channel. Is Rex actually a driver at all? Now, while this video will require spoilers from all throughout the entire story of the game, one of the first points I make, unfortunately, does involve Chapter 7 spoilers, so I'd recommend you either knowing the story up to the end of Chapter 7 or not caring about the story up till the end of Chapter 7 for this video. I do have one point at the end of the video that will involve literally the ending cutscene, but I'll give another warning for that when we get there. So, starting out, there's the question of aptitude. We do know as a fact that if you want to awaken a blade from a core crystal the regular way, you need a certain aptitude. That's clearly shown off in a cutscene in Chapter 2 where one Gormati guy tries to awaken the blade, he gets eviscerated, we're not sure if he's dead or not, but at the very least, he gets very bloodied and put unconscious, while the other guy, who's named Jack and you actually get to help out in a later side quest, he awakens his blade fine with zero problems whatsoever. Now, obviously, Rex can awaken blades from core crystals with zero problems whatsoever, so case closed, he has the aptitude, he's a real driver. And yet, he might not be using his own ability to do that, because remember, his heart is not his own heart. He's got a core crystal in his chest providing that for him. And not only is it a regular core crystal, it's an Aegis core crystal. And we can explicitly see, via Malos and Sever, that Aegises, even with only part of their core intact, can awaken blades and become drivers. As a matter of fact, it's actually more plausible for Rex using half of Pyra's core to be able to do that than Malos, because Malos's core was damaged in a fight, while Pyra split her core intentionally, deliberately, and obviously with a lot more care because it actually is well-defined shapes as opposed to just shattered-y stuff like Malos. So clearly any abilities inherent in that core should be a little more intact than they would be with Malos. And that does pose the question. Is Rex awakening blades using his own aptitude, or simply piggybacking on the abilities of the Aegis core in his chest? Now obviously, the main way where you'd be able to figure that out is look in his backstory. Has he tried and failed to awaken a blade in the past? Well, we do know as a fact that he was never a driver before meeting Pyra. He says that himself. Malos actually questions why he knows driver arts without, well, having a blade. The answer is, of course, that Gramps taught him those driver arts, but it is worth noting that the arts he knows are driver arts and not just techniques that a non-driver would use with a sword, because he doesn't need to change his fighting style up at all once he gets Pyra. He just needs to learn how a driver works as opposed to learn how to retool his swordplay with a new type of weapon and a new type of power. This actually brings us back to Chapter 2, because after watching Jack awaken his blade, Gramps turns to Rex, tells him something about more allies always being useful in this kind of situation, and then literally pulls a core crystal out of his ass and makes Rex awaken the blade from it. There are a few ways you can interpret this, but I'm seeing it as he had this core crystal on him for God knows how long, possibly as long as he'd been watching over Rex, and had never given it to him. Now, I'm interpreting this as, oh, he was training Rex to gain the aptitude to become a driver, and yeah, it's never explicitly stated whether or not you can gain and lose aptitude, just whether or not you have it or not, but it's never said that you're either born with it or not, so I'm just gonna go with, yeah, you can either gain aptitude or lose aptitude depending on how you live your life, what kind of person you are, that kind of thing. So I'm looking at this as Gramps was training Rex to become a driver someday. He had this core crystal already picked out, and yeah, while he trained Rex with a broadsword and the blade from that core crystal is guaranteed to be a wind knuckle by the game, it's possible that Gramps was just like, yeah, swords are good, they're useful, they're a good first weapon to teach him. I don't know if he was expecting him to meet the Aegis and become the Aegis' driver and gain the ability to awaken other blades then. I don't know how that was going. I'm viewing that scene as Gramps had this core crystal that he was planning on giving to Rex once he saw that he probably had the aptitude to become a driver. Then he'd allow him to live out his fantasies, being a heroic driver, saving people and looking for Elysium and that kind of thing. The process was just, you know, really accelerated by the whole Aegis driver thing, and he figured, alright, yeah, I know Malos is the other Aegis, I know he's got a blade, Rex has the Aegis in his chest, so he could probably also awaken blades fine now. That and the fact that, yeah, he's the Aegis's driver, Aegis breaks all the rules, he should be a regular driver. There's a lot of ways where I could see Gramps rationalizing that Rex should be able to awaken a core crystal after meeting Pyra, even if he hadn't been able to before. The main hole in that is, well, we're never told explicitly whether or not Rex has tried to awaken a blade in the past. We do know a little bit about his backstory, and there is a heart-to-heart further detailing his childhood. It's in Fonset, this little alcove in a wall that you need to actually burn through some vines to get through. It's kind of interesting. It actually took me a while to get to on the first playthrough. And yeah, it talks about a younger Rex after he first came to Fonset, and it doesn't mention anything about drivers or blades or anything. There's no real talk about Rex awakening a core crystal or whatever. And yeah, if you check the treasure trove in that little alcove, there isn't a core crystal in that treasure chest, and it is implied that Rex made that chest himself and put it there to come back to at a later date, but was sidetracked by his whole adventure thing. So yeah, I guess that's another point in the corner of Rex literally never had any contact with blades or core crystals up until the beginning of the game. I actually had a whole theory planned out where he showed Gramps a core crystal before trying to awaken it, and Gramps was like, no, wait, don't touch that until you're older, lock it up in that treasure chest in your secret base, and come back to it later. But that also does kind of contradict the fact that Rex doesn't seem to know what aptitude is in Chapter 2, because it actually needed to be explained to him, and therefore the player. Characters not knowing things tends to be a good vehicle for exposition, as you know. But I still do have another theory that it's more headcanon than anything, if I'm being honest. That, honestly, regardless of the fact that it is totally ambiguous whether or not Rex had the aptitude before meeting Pyra, I have a feeling that Pyra might not have tried to save Rex if he didn't have the aptitude. Like, maybe something would have gone wrong. Like, if you can't drive a regular blade, you might have some trouble with the Aegis, too. But that is even more headcanon than what I'm thinking of. This is the part that involves the ending cutscene. At the end of the game, regardless of your opinion on it, Rex is capable of using the Aegis core crystal once it's made whole again to reawaken Pyra and Mithra after their combined form sacrifices herself to save the world. So, very clearly, since the Aegis crystal isn't in his chest since it's in his hand when he's doing that, he does have the aptitude at that point in time. So that seems to answer the question outright. Yeah, he is a driver. He's a real driver. He's not banking on anyone else's power. He did all that on his own. But in my opinion, wouldn't it be better if that wasn't the case? If he started out just as a guy who happened to fall in the right situation, he was given this incredible power by basically happenstance and his own inability to recognize a shady business deal going on. And once he got that power, he didn't really know how to use it. Throughout most of his journey, he was accidentally hurting Pyra and Mithra. He was hurting who he'd later come to love, just by using this power that had been given to him. And yet, over time, he got better. He forged a new relationship with the Aegis, one better than even Adam had. He was able to unlock their true power, and form a bond that really eclipsed that of any blade and driver. But despite all that, he still failed in the end. The woman he loved did have to sacrifice herself to save the world, and he let her go. Now, obviously, at the end, he does try to save her, and people say that that kind of undermines any character development you could get from there, but Zeke is able to talk him out of it pretty quickly just by like, you love her. If you really loved her, you would let her go. And he agrees to that. He does let her go. What if either that moment or some other heroic or particularly good moment that allowed him to get past something that was holding his character back, that was the catalyst. Just all of a sudden, bam, Rex has the aptitude. And at the end, that comes back. Under his own power, he's able to awaken a blade for the first time. And it's the most important Blade Awakening he's ever done. He's bringing Pyra and Mithra back into the world after they sacrificed everything for him. Just for me, that might sound terrible to you. Please let me know about any of this stuff in the comments. I do want to hear about this kind of thing, because it is pretty headcanon-y. But in my opinion, that makes a lot of Rex's character arc, and the story as a whole, a lot more interesting, and gives it a whole other layer of depth that didn't really occur to me until I started making this video. Or he could have just been a miracle driver the entire time. Recording this part after I finished editing the rest of the video, because I didn't actually notice this until now, or I noticed it in the past, I just didn't remember it. Most of the time throughout the entire story, when Rex and the Aegis are separated and he doesn't have access to her weapon, he'll be using another Blades weapon. At the one point when she's taken in Chapter 3, he'll just have whatever weapon the generic common Blades in his first slot has. Early Chapter 7, and most other times up until then, he'll have Rock's Scythes, and late Chapter 7, until you actually meet up with Pyra and Mithra again, he'll be using Nia's Scimitar. And yet, in the ending cutscene, after he has the crystal separated from his body, he has his original scrap broadsword and not Rock's weapon. It makes sense that he doesn't have Nia since she's in driver form the entire time while they're running away, but you'd think that they'd just give him Rocks or even a common Blades. But no, they give him his non-driver weapon. I think that actually lends a little bit more credence to this theory. But we'll never know for sure. And until next time, this is Luxon, signing off.